Well, good day. Today is Sunday, July 7th. Another muggy day, overcast and muggy. It's about 72 degrees out. And while I'm waiting for parts on that trailer there, like I said, I had the wheel bearings in stock, but I didn't have the seals, and I went to 4 different bearing places in town, and nobody had the seals, so I had to order the seals in, and they should be in here. I should have them by late tomorrow afternoon. So in the meantime, I thought I would start rewiring this forklift, being it gives me trouble all the time. That's a mess of wires that I've cut out. It's all old and brittle, and they got connectors every 6 inches in the wire. Butt connectors, and they weren't the heat shrink type ones, just regular ones that have corroded, and it's always given me trouble. So I started running one by one, wire at a time, and I got the main charge wires hooked up in here, and the power wire going over to from the new gauges I'm installing, new amp gauge here. It's not done yet. New water temperature gauge, and we should replace this water temperature gauge, and then I'm going to put an oil pressure gauge in here. Yet, being I had all this stuff in stock from when I had the shop, and I replaced this 1/4 inch hose here that comes from the head of the engine and moves antifreeze through the propane regulator to warm the propane up in cold weather. And so it gets pumped out from the head through this big hose here into this regulator here, and then it goes back into the block through this 3/8 hose here. It was cracking up and it wasn't leaking yet, but I figured I'd catch it while I was in here before it does spring a leak, because it was cracked up pretty bad. And they had more ground wires on here going from the engine block to the chassis. Then you could shake a stick at it, and it was all light gauge wires, like you can see one here right chopped off right here. And I'm going with a full-size battery cable that I had in stock right here. It goes from the engine block here over to the, well, it was over to there, over to a frame bolt here, and on this end here it was gonna go onto here, onto the fan mounting bolt to the chassis. So you got a few more wires to do, but they had, when I cut the harnesses open, they had all kinds of wires in the harnesses that went nowhere, and it was just a cluster of wires. And I'm also installing a fuse panel up here. You can see I got it sitting there right now on one bolt, so that I can put the lights on fuses instead of just no fuses. So when you turn the key on, that'll power up that fuse panel, and when you turn the key off, it'll shut that fuse panel off completely. So that way the lights and the flashing lights and backup alarms and all that kind of stuff is all fused instead of not being fused. Yeah, so that's what I'm just tinkering with here again today. I started it late yesterday afternoon. This wire here that goes to the hour meter, that'll go over to the fuse panel. See how, like I say, they got non-heat shrinkable terminals on here, and then there's right away a butt connector. And that's the way it's been all through here, and they get corroded and all kinds of stuff. And everything went on the accessory screw on the ignition switch, so it's way overloaded with wires on there. So everything's going to move, just going to be one battery wire, one 9-gauge wire over to the fuse panel, and then everything will plug into there. All the gauge lights and work lights and stuff like that will all hook into that small little 6-circuit fuse panel. It's more than I need, but it's better than putting fusible links in everything. And you have to hunt for the fuses, put them all in one place. But it looks like a mess because I still got to take all these wires out yet. This one here, this one here. Yeah, like this is another ground wire that went from this very first gauge over to the hour meter, and then it had the ground wire going over here from the motor to the chassis, and another one over there to the other side. And they got one wire coming from the alternator here to the ignition key on the auxiliary side, and then they got the other alternator wire, control wire over here. It goes on, runs all up through there, it comes down, and it goes on to the ignition side of the coil on here. So I'm gonna bring everything into one location and put all new wires, because over half these wires are old and brittle. So being I have the wire, it's tinned marine wire, which is made to take vibration, so that's what I'm using on here, because the equipment vibrates too. This is your neutral safety switch right here, which this was the start wire here that went onto there, which I'm going to change this, because see right away they got a connector there, and it's like it doesn't need to be there. I'm going to come off the key and put a new one in there. I've already put a new wire from here down to the solenoid on the starter. And yeah, got some loom there, which I had in stock when I had the shop. And I had the fuel line. I've got many boxes of it. And that's a part leftover piece out of one box. But he's got everything was just put together with just them cheap old plastic crimp connectors, and no heat shrink, no nothing, no solder. So the heat shrink terminals that I use have a low melting point solder in them. So when you heat them up to shrink them, they also have a low melting point solder inside the terminal. So when you heat them up with the heat shrink gun, they melt the solder inside there, and they solder the terminal. All at the same time. And I got my boom truck home. Ow! Ooh, whack, hit my head on the mirror. I got my boom truck home from the Loins Truck and Auto, where it was for the last 3 years. Got it home the other day, sitting down there on the driveway. Let me see if I can zoom in on it. It's a dump truck and hydro boom on it, which I can drop the boom off in like 5 minutes, put the outriggers down, pull the 2 pins, and disconnect the 2 quick couplers on the number 20 hoses. So it's down there. The piggies are all laying around. It's really muggy, humid. So I'm just sort of tinkering away with this, since I can't do that trailer until I get the wheel seals. And then we'll get back on that one. Well, I got most of all the new wires ran. I still have to run the ground wire up from the dash up to the dash yet, and I have to run the oil pressure sending unit wire here. I gotta run that up to the dash yet, but I got all them in there now, and I got all the old wires out pretty much. The ignition key is hanging there yet. I've already wrapped all this and put loom down in through here to the alternator. I got the ignition wire in there, new one. Right there, that white one there, it goes over to the distributor cap. Yeah, and I got the neutral safety switch all wired. And I got the gauges just set in place there. They're all wired except for the oil pressure one. I got to run that wire, and the lights for the backlit, except for lighting the gauges. I still got to hook that into the system yet. So when I put the light switch on right here, these here will also light up as well as the lights up on the machine. Yeah, so that's it for this Sunday. My back is killing me, and the sun is going down. I just fed all the piggies and the young calves, as you've seen there. You guys all ready to go out for the night, grazing on the grass now? Eh? They wait till just about dark and then they head out. These guys. It's funny, the pigs were way down in the bush down there and they heard me giving grain to these guys and they come charging up here full tilt. They must have seen me from down the bush or something, I don't know. Okay, everybody, take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.